At this point in the semester, we will have finished looking at the firm as the producer. So we were looking at 4 different types of markets, and the firm was trying to maximize profits, and they would do that where marginal cost was equal to marginal revenue. Right now, we're going to be looking at the firm as an employer. And just like in the goods and services market, when the firm was a producer, we distinguish between perfect and imperfect competition. Right here, we will also distinguish as an employer. You also will have either a perfectly competitive situation or an imperfectly competitive situation. Now, what did perfect competition mean or imply when we were looking at the firm as a producer? It implied that you had no impact on the price. So here, as an employer, when you're talking about pure competition, you are looking at a firm that will not have any impact on the wage that they will be paying. So they will be paying the going wage rate. Now, you will also look at the employer under imperfect competition, and here you could either have one employer, and that would be a monopsony, or you would see imperfect competition as labor unions, where employees are all working as one, and therefore they also have an impact on the price. So this lecture today is going to look mainly at pure competition of the firm as the employer. When you were looking at pure or perfect or imperfect competition for the producer, you were able to distinguish based on the demand curve. So when the demand was a horizontal line, you knew you were talking about perfect competition. If you were looking at the imperfect competition, you knew that your demand curve was downward sloping and your marginal revenue was steeper. Now, for the employer, we will be distinguishing between perfect and imperfect competition based on the supply of labor curve rather than the demand. So what is the demand for labor? Basically, it is determined by the contribution of each worker. And this contribution is going to be assessed by the marginal revenue product, or the contribution to total revenue from the sale of the goods that the extra worker has produced. When you go for an interview and your future employer is assessing the value of your services to the company, they are looking at how much you will be contributing as opposed to how much they will have to be paying you for that particular job. How do you calculate marginal? Marginal anything. Remember, we talked about marginal revenue, marginal utility. Marginal will be the change in total revenue. So how are we going to calculate the marginal revenue product? This is going to be marginal product times the price of your output. So what is marginal product? It is going to be the contribution in physical terms of every worker that you hire, every subsequent worker that you hire. So if per hour you are able to produce 10 widgets, 10 baskets, that would be in physical units. That would be your marginal product. But how are you going to express this in dollar terms? Well, you will have to multiply this by the price per unit, per widget, or per basket to be able to give you the value in dollar terms. So if you produced 10 units per hour, and this is $2 a piece, then your marginal revenue product is going to be $20 per hour. Obviously, your future employer would not like to hire you at more than the $20 that you're contributing, because otherwise he or she would be losing money on you as a worker. when looking at the marginal product, we are going to be reminded of the law of diminishing returns. We did that returns. We did that when we looked at the marginal cost. But just a brief reminder. The law of diminishing returns is going to calculate the contribution of each worker, and you will see that at first, the first workers that you are going to be hiring, each worker is going to be adding more to total output than the previous worker did. And after a certain time, the next worker is going to start adding less than the previous worker did. That's when diminishing returns set in. And if you continue hiring, you will reach a point where, although you have more workers working, the total output is going to be going down altogether. So this is how your diminishing returns relates to marginal product, and as a result also to the marginal revenue product. We have the marginal revenue product curve that is downward sloping, and this is going to be equal to your demand curve for labor. Why is the demand curve downward sloping? Because of the law of diminishing returns. The next worker is going to be adding less, and as a result, since marginal product is going down, marginal revenue product will also be going down. So if you contributed 10 units and the next person hired is only going to be contributing 8 units, then obviously if you're still selling it at $2 a piece, then the marginal revenue product of the next worker is only going to be $16, while the previous worker contributed $20. Your marginal revenue product is going to look different whether we're looking at selling goods in a pure competition or selling goods under imperfect competition. So if you're selling goods under perfect competition, then you are multiplying smaller marginal products by the same price. So the only thing that determines the slope of the marginal revenue product, which is the demand for labor, if you are selling under perfect competition, would be the law of diminishing returns. Next worker adds less, therefore marginal revenue product is going to be lower and lower. So what happens if you are in an imperfectly competitive market, selling goods under an imperfectly competitive situation? Well, not only are you going to be multiplying a lower marginal product because of the law of diminishing returns, but under imperfect competition, to sell more, you need to reduce your price. Therefore, you are going to have a decrease in both marginal product as well as the price that you are selling at. So under imperfect competition, your demand curve is going to be a steeper line, since the drop is going to be magnified. So how are we going to shift the marginal revenue product? How is the demand for labor going to increase or decrease? Well, if you remember, marginal revenue product is equal to marginal product times price of output, then if your productivity changes or if the price of the output changes, that will shift your whole demand curve. So let's say that your workers become more productive, which means that they are going to be producing more per hour. As a result, your demand curve is going to be moving out. If the price of what you are selling goes down, will your demand curve move to the right or to the left? Well, if the price goes down, you are multiplying by a lower price, and therefore the demand would be shifting in. So in and out shifts of the marginal revenue product curve is going to be mainly a result of either productivity, and that would be your marginal product, or the price of the output. So now let's turn to the supply of labor. And this is where we're going to distinguish between pure perfect competition or imperfect competition. And it is the supply of labor that will determine whether we're talking about pure competition in the hiring or imperfect competition. If you have no impact on the price, then your supply curve of labor is going to be a horizontal line. Let's say that you're hiring at $10, regardless of how many people you're going to be hiring, you will always be paying them $10. Are you a large employer or a small employer? If you have no impact on the wage, you must be a small employer. So let's say in agricultural, day laborers would be hired at a particular wage rate, regardless of which farm they're going to be working on. Of course, remember that this is an idealistic situation. We're talking about theories here. So your supply curve is also going to be what we call the marginal factor cost curve. And this is going to be a supply. And for perfect competition, it is going to be a horizontal line. So let's see, what is marginal factor cost? Marginal means extra. Factor implies factor of production, so let's say labor, and cost, obviously, dollars that you're going to be spending. So marginal factor cost is the increase in cost from hiring one more worker. And since you're hiring them all at $10, then this is going to be a horizontal line. So, what are we looking for? We are looking for equilibrium, and at that equilibrium, your employer, the firm, will be maximizing profits. So if you remember that firm as a producer, they maximize their profits at marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. Here, we're going to be maximizing profits basically along the same lines, except that it's going to be called slightly differently. And so that would be marginal factor cost. Marginal cost, that's for goods. Marginal factor cost, that's for labor. That's the wage rate. Equal to marginal revenue product. You see, marginal revenue, but here we're talking about marginal revenue product, or the revenue from hiring one more worker. So it's the same concepts. That's the good news. Whatever you remember from the previous chapters, it is applied once again to the analysis of the labor market. And by the way, that would apply to any factor of production, but we're mainly going to be concentrating on labor, since that's the largest component of factors of production hired. So what we see here is that let's take out the extra marginal revenue or demand curves here. And at this point, you see that marginal revenue product and marginal factor cost cross right here. Let's say that this is 20 people. So here we're looking at quantity of labor. Before that, when you're looking at the marginal cost, it was the marginal cost of each unit of output, whatever you had produced. Here we're talking about hiring. You have to have a different frame of mind here. So what happens when you hire 20 people? Well, according to this, you will see that the 20th person gets paid $10, and the 20th person also contributes $10. So you're saying, well, if this is the case, then where is the profit? Well, the profit was made on the previous workers. So if you look at worker, like right here, for instance, that worker, let's say this is worker number 8. If worker number 8 is paid $10, that worker will have contributed, let's say, $18 to the revenue of the company. So on worker number 8, you made $8. Now, the next worker, let's say worker number 9, will have contributed less. Let's say this is 16, still paid $10, but at the same time, you still have an addition to profits. The addition is smaller. Right now it's only of 6, while before that it was an addition of 8. But it is still an addition. Now when you reach this point right here, your profits are at their highest because you are not adding any more to your profits. If you were to hire worker number 21, you see that you will have been paying him or her $10, but their contribution would have been less than that. So the difference here would have been taken away from previous profits to pay that worker number 21. Obviously not a good idea. So in this first chapter, because the next chapter is going to be looking at imperfect competition, in this chapter we are looking at the firm as an employer. And what are they trying to achieve? Again, they would like to maximize their profits. And at what point will they maximize profits? Similar to when they were producing. They will maximize profits when the cost of the extra worker is just equal to the revenue derived from that extra worker. If you show this on a graph, you will see that the marginal factor cost is a horizontal line if we are talking about pure competition, because every worker is hired at $10. Now the marginal revenue product relates to the law of diminishing returns, which says that as you hire more workers, the next worker is going to be adding less. How do we see this? Well, you see that the marginal revenue product is going down. And that's the shape of the marginal revenue product, which is the demand for labor. How many units are you going to hire? As we said, maximizing profits right here, 20. Because if you hire 21, your profits are going to be smaller. If you hire less than 21, less than 20, then you will not have taken advantage of all the potential additions to your profits that you could have made. So the last question that I'd like to ask you is, what has to happen here? What changes have to happen in order for you to hire more than 20 people? And the answer is, either your marginal revenue product has to move out, and therefore here would be a new quantity that will maximize your profit, or your marginal factor cost will have to come down. At that point, you will be hiring more workers. So we will continue with that topic under imperfect competition next time. Thank you.